What is going on, guys? The Heart Pirates TCG here. I'm bringing you a competitive deck list that I made for Mono Crocodile. I think this deck is actually really good and actually probably one of the best decks in the format. Obviously, it's a tier below, Zoro and Newgate and Katakuri, but I think it can compete with other decks like Lucci, Ace. It actually can compete with, it has a decent matchup into both the red decks too. I'll explain that in a little bit, but let's just get started with the list. I'll explain why as we go. So for counters, 2K counters are playing 4 Kaya. I don't really play her too often unless my hand is super dead and I already mulliganed and I just need cards. Same with the 4 Dracul Mihawk right here. Dracul Mihawk is good because he puts a body on the field. He's not all that great. You just prefer to have him as a discard counter or a discard fodder, and at very worst an attacker. But you know, cycling through your hand can come in handy sometimes. I'm playing 3 Mr. 2. Just because same thing, it's a body, like if you really need it into the Zoro matchup, it's a body that can also search a couple cards on here. For example, like your Miss All Sundays and your Crocodiles, we'll see later on in the game, or in the video in the game. But yeah, those are the 2K counters, and then we'll move on to the blockers. We're only playing 2 of the 1-drop law. I love this card, but right now is just not the format for it. It just like loses into like Marco and Fire Fist and like all these cards that can just kill, Garp, like all these cards can just pop things. Robin, it's just not the time for Trafalgar Law. So like I used to play it at 4. It's just not as good anymore. And then we're playing 3 Miss All Sunday. I really don't like this. I like the card because it can recycle your events, but like same thing as Law. Like it just keeps getting popped. Like it keeps getting popped by like Newgates and Marcos and all that, and it's just hard to keep it on the field. So like it's only impactful because it can bring back events. So it's like technically a +1 even if they pop it. Because they use a resource and then you get a card back. So those are some of our blockers. We're playing more. Then we're playing 2 Gecko Maria. We're playing these because we can get back the Dracul Mihawk with them. We can get back the starter deck Law if we need it. We can get back a couple other cards too later on in this, so I'll show you that. He's good just because he puts a body on the field and he can help recycle cards back to the hand. Like, if you have like a grind game, sometimes you really need those like extra counters or blockers. Then we're playing the Senamaru engine. We're playing 3 Senamaru. Senamaru is absolutely insane right now. I'm playing like a lot of this deck, like red is very heavy into the format, obviously. So we're playing these cards because they can't be easily taken out by a Marco or anything like that. If they want to jet pistol this, fine, but I don't want to play cards that can get Marcoed, right? And like without like any value. So Senamaru is really good. If you can keep it on the field for like for 2 turns, like it gets its value and it's absolutely insane. It can come a 5K attacker too. Next, we're playing 2 of the Kumas. The reason we're playing Kumas is because we're playing a pretty heavy Pacifista engine. And, even if you don't have any Pacifistas in hand, he's a blocker, and at worst case scenario, he's a 2K counter. If he does block and you have one of these in hand, you turn into a 2-blocker play. You can play the Pacifista. I'm only playing 2 because it's just not a counter, and sometimes it can, draw dead in hand. But I am playing 4 of the Pacifistas. This, again, is a 1K counter at worst. It is, playable in the deck. And then it also is a body you can just play on the field, a 4/6, not bad. It's 4/6 vanilla. The reason I also like the Senamaru engine is because you can also tell, you can figure out what cards are in your life whenever you search for a Senamaru. I always look for like the events I play, like how many Mihawks I have in there, and like Crocs, and I can just kind of guesstimate like the important cards in my life. So the reason that this deck is competitive now is because we're playing 4 Croc. If you guys have been following the channel for a long time, I used to say this card is absolutely dog doo-doo, but it got a lot better because this is a very trigger heavy format, with like yellow, with their offensive and defensive cards, and then you have like Air Door if people play that. You have like Nami events, people will play that. It's just like, it's very good. It either gets 2 cards out of their hand or it banishes a life, which is really good. And it's a 7K that also reduces your blue events, and we play a decent amount of them, and I'll explain that. But first, the last character we're gonna play are 4 Mihawks. You could play it at 3. There's a couple cards in here that you can like take out if you want to. I'll explain that after the video and what the strengths of this deck is. I would either draw too many of these or none at all, and it just felt really bad when I did it. Some people, you might opt to play the Soga King. I don't play Soga King because it just feels like it just doesn't feel good. It probably could help you cycle cards, but I just couldn't find the room for it. I was playing 2 promo Jinbei. I cut them for the first events you'll see on here, for the Brickfist. The reason I did that is because Brickfist is really good into like red, or it's decent into red because, you know, you can still get their Marcos off the field, like you can still get their Atmos off the field, things like that. But it's really good into black right now. So like Kuzan, Borsalino, you know, characters like that, it still like gets rid of that. So Brickfist is really good. It only costs 1 with Crocodile too. Also, one only costs 1 is 2 Love Mellows. I was playing Overheat instead of Love Mellows, but I bounce enough, and I really like the extra card draw. I mean, a lot of times you don't really need it because you have a ton of cards in hand most of the time anyway. It's just, and sometimes they're dead. Overheat just really wasn't coming too much in handy, but if you prefer it, like you could play Kaya more and bounce it back to your hand. Then we're playing 4 Sanji's Pilaf. The reason we're playing this, obviously, is because the trigger is absolutely insane. Also, sometimes you just don't have access to cards in your deck, and you just really need cards to play and draw into cards. And sometimes you have extra Dawn, especially like people know, like blue players like also have usually have a ton of Dawn because they load up their characters anyway. If you want to put like 3 or 2, if you have Croc on the field, Dawn into drawing 2 cards, like that's actually super helpful. And then the trigger is just draw 2 cards for free, which is insane. And the main reason this deck got better is 3000 Worlds. 3000 Worlds is bonkers in this meta right now, right? Because think of all the cards that we can play. We have access to we can 3000 Worlds, you know, 5 cost of law. We can do Bluno, Borsalino, Marco, Blocker Marco, Magellan. There's like so many cards that this hits, and the fact that you can recycle it with Miss All Sunday is absolutely insane. You know, the trigger could also save your life at the very least. Place a character with the cost of 3 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck. I used it today on a what is it called? A brand new, the searcher for the Navy, but it actually came in handy because I was able to recycle it with Miss All Sunday anyway, which is what I was planning on doing. So yeah, this card is really good, and I want to explain why I think this deck is meta real quick. If you stuck through this video, I'll explain why for you guys. So the reason why I think it's good is because a lot of these cards that I'm playing actually have great like counters to the matchups. For example, this deck absolutely gets dumpstered by yellow. Like it's just the way it is. Like you could have a decent yellow matchup if you were able to, you know, get this out and be able to secure it and like not attack their life, but it's just so hard to do because they can Katakuri it. They just don't have a lot of removal. So like you can beat yellow if you go like Senemaru into like Croc, which is just it's a losing battle, but you know, you can't, like a lot of times you get so much value. Like this deck destroys Lucci, so like if you have Lucci in your meta, like all their Borsalinos, all their Blunos are just gone, and then like this card just keeps getting value until it gets Kaku'd or like Kobe'd, or you know, a lot of people will Sakazuki it, and then if they hit your life, like you can obviously trigger into the Sanji's Pilaf and just keep drawing cards with Love Mellow, bounce their cards back to their hand, and then you know, even it has a decent matchup into Newgate, because obviously if you go you know, Senemaru into either Brickfist or 3000 Worlds, and then you finally get into Mihawk, like you can Mihawk all of their cards on their field. Like for example, you can Mihawk their Thatch, you can Mihawk their Marcos, you can do all that, and then you can stall long enough with all of these like blockers that like can't be KO'd easily. Like for example, like the Pacifista's a 5k, Kuma's a 5k, and then you have this that recycles, like, you know, you get a Love Mellow back, and then if they don't, you know, if they're like, even like if they can't pop these cards, like Miss All Sunday is still a blocker that gains you value, Trafalgar Law is still a blocker that gains you value, and you can recycle it. And we're playing 12 2Ks too. Sometimes we can eat hits if we don't want to take them. It has decent matchups into pretty much all of the meta decks except for Katakuri. And that's the way I built this deck. You could change a couple things. The things that you could change are, here, I'll take these out the way real quick. The things that you could change this Love Mellow into Overheat. This is a flex spot, this Brickfist. If you want to take out a Mihawk, you can, but I probably wouldn't, just for consistency purposes. I like the Gecko Maria as a 2 of. It can like I said, at worst, it's a 1K counter. You can maybe replace it with like a Soga King or something like that. But other than that, like this deck has like mandatory spots for these cards. I think Croc is really the engine of the deck though, like that and Senemaru. So like you don't really want to take that out, but like these are kind of like flex spots right here. You know, you have 2 for Level of Mellow, change it into a Overheat. You have 2 for Brickfist, change it to whatever. Soga King, you can take out a Mihawk if you want to. You can take out both these Morias if you want to. So you have a couple flex spots if you'd like. I personally wouldn't. I've played a lot of games on the simulator. I just came in second at the tournament at my locals with this, so I think this deck is actually really strong, and the only thing it loses to is yellow, so if you have a lot of yellow cards in your meta, just don't even play it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you guys are running this deck. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think it can compete with some of these best decks, so let me know. And be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for some more content. I have some exciting news coming up, and I'd like to share it with you all. Have a good day. Peace.